Okay, I'm being perfectly honest with you. When I first started homeschooling, I thought anybody who taught their kids Latin was just kind of a snob. I thought that people who focused on teaching Latin when there were so many other things that you could teach, like Spanish, they were just trying to show off. But then I started digging more into classical education in Charlotte Mason, and I learned that there's actually a lot of value in learning Latin. So in today's video, we're going to talk all about why you should teach your kids Latin, and I'm even going to give you a walkthrough of the first level of the Latin curriculum that we use in our homeschool. So before we get started, if this is our first time meeting, hi, my name is Brittany. I am a homeschooling mom to 4 kids, high school down to kindergarten. We have been homeschooling for almost a decade now, and I love to talk all things homeschool and homemaking on this channel. So if that is of interest to you, I would love it if you would click that subscribe button, like this video, and leave me a comment if you teach Latin in your homeschool, or if maybe you're considering it after this video. Okay, so I have notes down here, so if I'm glancing down or anything, that would be why. Okay, so first of all, like I said, why Latin? Why not teach something like Spanish, which our kids could utilize being in, especially in our area, there's a large Spanish-speaking community. So why not teach Spanish or something like that first? So teaching Latin to children, first of all, gives them a stronger vocabulary and spelling when it comes to English. So many of our words in the English language are actually derived from Latin words. They have the roots within Latin. And so whenever you start looking at especially suffixes and prefixes, you will see a lot of Latin coming into play there. You will also just, as our verbiage in general, there's a lot of things that come from Latin. Even if you start going into French words have their roots in Latin. So even that traces back into Latin roots. So over half of the English words that we speak have their roots in Latin. And I never really noticed it that much, but we do it all the time whenever we are just reading or we're talking. My kids will point out, oh, look, there's a derivative. That's a Latin word that we learned this week or last week or whenever. And we see it all the time now. I never really noticed it very much before, but it's really cool that they're starting to put that together, and it helps them with their vocabulary because you start to see, oh, I know what this Latin word means. So now I'm coming into this word that's a little bit more complex, and I can break that down and kind of understand what that means. So contra, we learned this one this week, contra means against. So a contradiction is something that is against. And so knowing those root words help them to grow their vocabulary and grow their spelling skills. It also builds their confidence within spelling because within Latin, there are a lot of patterns. So as they start seeing these patterns in Latin, they can start pulling them over into their English spelling as well. So Latin is also a language of stems, of roots and stems. And so there is a lot of having to pay attention to the grammar within Latin that translates over into when they start learning grammar into English. So it will actually improve grammar. So when they get into the higher level grades, I know with Charlotte Mason, a lot of times she didn't advocate for starting formal grammar until like 4th to 5th grade. But if you are teaching Latin at a younger age, they will naturally start being able to pull that grammar out. So when you start fleshing it out more as they get into more upper level elementary, they are just naturally already doing that. And so it's easy to build on that, and it comes very organically. You're not having to shove all of the information in. It just kind of starts to happen. And you start having to pay attention to parts of speech and endings and structure within Latin. And so that makes it very, very easy to pull that over whenever they start learning grammar as well. So you start understanding like subjects and verbs, objects, cases, and tenses. And when you start learning all of that, obviously that is going to improve their writing skills. So as they start learning to write, we normally don't do formal writing until 3rd to 4th grade is kind of whenever I start to introduce a very gentle writing program. And at that point, they are already building this foundation where they are able to understand it a little bit more. It's almost like weightlifting for your language skills. You're doing all of this heavy lifting, and it actually makes it really easy whenever you start getting into higher levels. Now, speaking of modern languages, learning Latin as a child opens so many doors, because if you start with just learning Spanish, you just know Spanish. But if you learn Latin first, Spanish has its roots in Latin, and so it makes it easier to learn Spanish once you get into higher grades. But not just Spanish, all of the Romance languages. So I have them all written down. So you have Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. They all come from Latin. So were they to want to venture into French in high school, then you could very easily learn that language, because you've learned the foundational parts of the language, because you've set that foundation in elementary school with learning Latin. And they have shown that kids who learn Latin in elementary school pick up on these modern languages a lot easier whenever they get into upper levels. So even if they want to learn Spanish in middle school and high school, but they want to learn French or Romanian or Italian in college or upper high school, then they will very easily be able to pick up on that. I haven't been counting all of these points, but number 4 is it boosts critical thinking and memory. So remember how I said it was like weightlifting for your brain with the language skills? It really is. It builds your critical thinking skills, not just within language, but just critical thinking in general. Imagine how you might teach your child to play chess. And you want to do that because it builds logic. You're going to have them do like brain teasers, because it strengthens the brain, and you're able to translate that into other areas of their learning as well. Latin is the same way. It is an excessively challenging language, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing, because it's like a puzzle that they're having to figure out how to work. And so it makes their brain able to work at a much higher level a lot sooner, and conditions them in a way that they actually enjoy. My kids love Latin. Kids love languages. They love to learn languages. That's why whenever you're dealing, most kids that I know my kids do it, whenever they interact with anybody who's speaking Spanish, they want to use some of their native language with them, because they're so excited about it. Kids love learning languages. So tapping into that is so helpful, because it's just very beneficial. It helps them learn to start paying attention to detail, and it builds their memory, because there is so much memorization that happens naturally within Latin. This may be a moot point for those who don't have aspirations of law or medicine, but within the medical fields and within legal jargon, and even in theology, we see a lot of Latin used. And so it helps us to better understand this terminology as we are studying Latin. Whenever you get into the sciences, all of the scientific names are in Latin. And so it's a little bit, fun in that way. They're like, it makes science a little bit even more interesting than it already is, which kids normally love science, so that's not hard. But being able to look at that and say, oh, I know what this word means, or I can break that down because I've learned Latin, just another fun aspect of it. And thinking long term, it actually does help with SAT, ACT prep, which I know we're talking about elementary school, where that's like way down the road, but playing the long game. It also makes a connection into history and culture. It opens the window into Roman history, a lot of the literature that was written back then, and roots of Western civilization are planted within that time period. And so that's also helpful. And then lastly, it does produce some character formation and discipline, because they are having to learn patience and perseverance as they are learning this harder language. We live in an instant gratification society, and that is how the world thinks. So having to discipline ourselves to do something like learn Latin is so good, not just for our kids, but also for ourselves. So I have built my case as to why we should learn Latin. So if you have been convinced, let me show you the Latin curriculum I'm using with my kids, in case you are now looking for a Latin curriculum. Okay, so first of all, let's start out with what all you get. Well, I guess first of all, I should tell you, we use Memoria Press for Latin. And so we are currently working through Prima Latina with my second and fourth grader. Now, I will say, so this is the teacher book. I will say with Prima Latina, this is a little bit too easy for fourth grade. We have first form Latin, which is technically recommended for 4th/5th grade. I would not use it with a 4th/5th grader if you are just starting out in Latin and you have no experience. Even for a 5th grader, I would use their Latina Cristiana. I'm going to put a picture right up here of what it looks like on the website. All of this will be linked in the description box below as well. And that is where I would start, because first form Latin is extremely intense, and I really believe it's best used for middle school, unless you've used something like Prima Latina already or Latina Cristiana. If you have a foundation for Latin, I think that it would probably be okay to start it in 5th grade. I would not start it in 4th grade. Absolutely not. Prima Latina is very simplistic. So you get, what all you get with Prima Latina is you get your teacher guide. Then you also have a student workbook. And then you have a CD that it comes with that has all of the speaking Latin portion. It's just the teacher saying these things out loud. You get the flashcards, and then there is also a streaming video. You can get the DVD if you would prefer. I prefer the streaming because then we can use it anywhere. I don't have to have, I'm not tied to a DVD player. What it does not automatically come with are the lesson plans. Because they are assuming with Memoria Press that you're buying the entirety of the student level, and the lesson plan comes built within their curriculum. So you have to buy this individually. It is $8. I would just buy the download because it has these really nifty check boxes that you could use. And if you buy the download, you can reprint it for every child you end up using it with. And so that's my personal preference. It's not any better if you buy the printed version, because it's just a bound book. It's not like a nice lesson plan. It's just the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick rundown on how I set it up, because a lot of times when I first got Prima Latina in, I was so overwhelmed on how on earth do you do this. It was a little helpful to understand how you go through it. So every single day we are doing our flashcards, and we are doing their daily recitation, which is in the very back of the lesson plan. So you do need the lesson plans. Even if you create your own schedule, I kind of create my own schedule, but you do need the lesson plans because it has your recitation. And so it has a weekly recitation, and it has a daily recitation that you start on week 4. So every single day we do the daily recitation, we do our flashcards, we review the prayers that we've learned so far, because you're going to be learning prayers within the curriculum. And then we do our daily work that each day of the week has its own assigned work. Okay, so one of the only things that I don't like about the videos, because there are video lessons that go with this curriculum, is that you cannot stream them from a phone onto your television, which I prefer doing it on the television. So the workaround I have for that is either you can use your computer. There is a cast option within the computer on the streaming downloads. But you can also, if you have a Fire Stick, do it this way. So I go over to our internet option. And obviously, if you have a smart TV, it might work better for you. I can't get it to work on mine. Though my TV is a smart TV, it just acts dumb most of the time. Okay, so over on the Memoria Press, I have it saved in my bookmarks. And so it's really easy to go over to my bookmarks. And so I go over into my account. Okay, I have my information already saved in here. And so it comes up, and you can just go over to your streaming courses. And then there's all of my streaming courses. So then we have all of our chapters here. We go to whichever chapter we're on. And then there you go. It is a little bit older. I'll give you a little preview of what it looks like.
Now that we know a little bit of Latin, we're going to start our Latin conversation. Each class, I will start out by saying, Salvete class, and you will respond, Salve magistra.
So as you see, it's a little bit outdated. I will say some of her pronunciation is not perfect, but it's good enough that I'm pretty happy with it as a general rule. So it does feel like a very robust, very good curriculum. So I'm okay with the videos being a little bit older, because it's just still really a good curriculum. Monday, we do the video. The video takes about anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes to do the video. And that is your entire lesson. It feels like a lot the first time you're doing it. It's like drinking from the fire hose. But your entirety of your lesson is taught on Monday, and then you will spend Tuesday through Friday reviewing that one lesson that you learned. So what we do is we do our video, and then you have 2 pages that are just the review, and it's going over the exact same material that she does in the video. You are learning a prayer every week. So this lesson, for example, is lesson 15. You have some practical Latin that you're learning to begin your week. So this one is now or never. Last week, let's see, we learned where are you going was one. Julius Caesar, I came, I saw, or conquered. So Veni Vidi Vici, Anno Domini, sedete, so sit down, salve, which means hello. So the first thing that you're doing is some practical Latin. And then you have a lesson, and this is generally going over nouns, pronouns, parts of speech, derivatives, Latin nouns, things like that. That's what the lesson looks like. There are some vocabulary words that you are learning in Latin, and then you are learning a line from a prayer, a Latin prayer each week. So then for our Monday, we do the first review questions. And then also they give you a download for this vocab drill. And so they'll write down the Latin word and the English word, your new saying that you're learning, and the English translation of the saying. So we will do that first day of our vocab drill on Monday. And that's it for Monday, as we do our flashcards as well. And I'm going to go more into the flashcards at the very end. Tuesday we take off because we have homeschool groups. So we consolidate this into 4 days. Wednesday, I will pull the lesson back up. So we do our dailies, like we do our flashcards, our daily recitation, we review a prayer, and then I will review the lesson. We'll just go right back over all of this stuff. We'll read out our vocabulary words and our prayer up to wherever we are. And then they will do lesson 15 questions. So that lesson questions, now that they've gone through the lesson twice, they will be able to answer those questions. Then they do the vocab drill day 2. Thursday, which is our day 3, we once again give a light review over the lesson. We do our flashcards, like all of our daily stuff. Then we're going to come over and we're going to do this translate section down in here, which is literally just the words that you have been learning. You're going to translate them again into English. And then you're going to get the CD out and you're going to do speaking Latin. And she is going to say all of the words that you are learning this week with their English translation. She will say it, and then you will say it together. And that's all that the speaking Latin section is. This is also the time that I add new flashcards in. I have 2 sections within my flashcards. I have new and review. I will add the new cards in, and then I will move some cards over that we have mastered over into the review section. And so I will add our new flashcards into our bundle. And then on Friday, which is our last day, obviously, we are going to do one more quick review over the lesson on any points that I feel like they are still struggling with. We are going to come over and do our write and learn, which I may or may not have them do all of this because like they asked to write out the table blessing in Latin. Sometimes I have them do it. Sometimes I don't, but that's an option. And then they have a fun practice that they can do. So they'll do most of this, and then they will do the final vocab drill either on Friday or Thursday. It just depends on the week. Sometimes we do it on Friday, sometimes we do it on Thursday. And that's the extent of the lessons. You do have every 5 lessons, you have a review week where you're going to go back over all of the stuff that they've learned up until this point. And there is a test for them to do. You don't have to test them if you don't want to. You could just treat it as a review worksheet. You could do it open book. You're the teacher. You can make a decision on that. I do like to do it as a test to see if they are retaining the stuff that we've learned so far and if we need to go review other things. So let's talk flashcards real quick. The flashcards stopped me initially because there's no real instruction besides review your flashcards within it. So how I have this set up is I have probably about 4 to 5 weeks of flashcards in my new bundle. and I have them labeled just with a sticky note. And then I have everything else we've learned in our review section. So we will start out, I'm doing this with 2 children, and so I will start out pulling 3 flashcards from our review. And they're very simple. It has the Latin word with the derivative underneath, and then the English translation on the back. It has the lesson that you learn it at the top. And so we do 3 cards for each child out of our review section, and then we go through all of our new cards every single day. It just really does help to reinforce all of it. A lot of it is just doing it over and over and over again. But like I said, I have found this very easy to implement. It seems a little complicated, but it really only takes us probably about 10 to 15 minutes, with the exception of Monday because we have a video. But in all reality, Latin takes us about 10 to 15 minutes every day. Even my oldest, who's doing first form Latin, it takes him maybe 20 minutes a day at the very most to do first form Latin. So, but it's really good. They're learning. They have learned so much within this curriculum. So if you have any questions about Latin in general, or about Prima Latina, or if you want to see a flip through of first form Latin, make sure to leave that in the comments. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you in the next one.